I've been. Dreams are seeds we plant, my friend. Dusty boots, but a heart of gold. Your story's waiting to be told. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Cowbell ring and feel the beat. Hustle hard, don't take a seat. Every step you're blazing trails. Inventive journey never fails. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small but shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Your time is now, your stars align. Your time is now, your stars align.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups and 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. If you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Now, today we've got another great guest on the podcast, Kyle Gray. And Kyle started his journey in college. Didn't know what he wanted to do, but wanted to travel. So ended up, or I can't remember, living or moving to South America, and he can clarify that a bit. Started a business to do while he was in college. Afterwards, got hired by a startup to do some content marketing. Built up a reputation and focused on storytelling for the stage of presentation and coaching. Worked worked across a lot of industries and has been since then has been doing his own business with this as a focus. So with that much as a quick introduction, welcome on the podcast, Kyle.
Hey, Devin, thank you so much for having me today. I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's the maybe 100,000 foot view of the journey, but it's been a lot of not being sure exactly what I want to do, having an intuition and leaning into it and, and following through and being surprised by it, which I think is really like aligned with a lot of inventors who maybe they have a vision, they don't know exactly what they set out to create, and they surprise themselves and maybe everyone else along the way.
Yeah, well, looking forward to having you on or hearing your journey. So I just gave a quick introduction to a much longer journey, but why don't we rewind and unpack that a little bit and tell us a little bit about how your journey got started?
Yeah, so it started very close to where you are physically. I think a lot of my entrepreneurship started at the University of Utah. And in the early stages of my time at the university, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and I was very stressed out about that fact Probably the first instinct or intuition was I wanted to be a musician and a rock star. I played in a band, and wrote a bunch of music, and I wanted to write songs that impacted and changed people, and I wanted to write things that were unique and interesting. I ended up putting a lot of pressure on myself to becoming a musician, which ended up burning me out on it and making it like an unpleasant process for me to engage in. The next thing that I discovered I wanted to do was travel the world after spending a summer in an exchange program in Chile and starting to learn how to speak Spanish. I became really enchanted by this and started finding every way possible to get back to South America. I did another semester long exchange in Argentina. I found my way to work for a nonprofit in Peru for about 5 months. I worked for an airline in Brazil, and a lot of these were assisted and facilitated by the University of Utah's Hinckley Institute of Politics and Study Abroad program. And came back and still wasn't quite sure what I had some skills of being able to get lost in foreign countries and navigate things in an interesting way, but didn't know exactly what to do with that. But I did start to see, this was around 2012, blog posts and podcasts and these kind of things about people building businesses and traveling all over the world. And I wanted to figure out how to do that. And started at the University of Utah using their different entrepreneurship programs like the Lassonde Center and starting making a bunch of really bad business ideas. I had like a drop shipping website that would send fire pits, outdoor fire pits to people. That was it was kind of fun, but I just didn't really interest me. I remember coming up with an idea of having a custom leather jacket business. In one of my travels, I went to Morocco, and I remember going to one of the leather tanneries there. And these guys told me, like, hey, any kind of jacket you want, give us 2 days and we'll make it exactly how you want. If you like this one, but just want it in a different color, 48 hours. If you just think the sleeves are a little too short on this one, give us 2 hours and we've got it. And I started thinking, like, man, what if somebody could just sign on to this website and like build a jacket like you would build a video game character and then come up with a custom order, send it off to these people, and then it would be sent back, a custom leather jacket. I started having many conversations and through this process discovered that I don't care nearly enough about fashion to have a fashion site. Um, but yeah, and again, kind of the just following the intuition, making mistakes, and growing through that. Eventually, I found my way to professional writing. I got hired by a startup called WP Curve to carry on their content
Just
marketing.
curious, before you got into the professional writing and working
Yeah,
for the startup, was that or over kind of what space of time or span of time did you do the various businesses? And was there were they all kind of a similar kind of lack of success or lack of interest or otherwise didn't necessarily get you to where you wanted to be or maybe or help us kind of understand that or
that's
that
a great
phase or
question.
period?
Um, Everyone got me a little bit closer. Just because they failed, in a sense, doesn't mean that they weren't good learnings. And I slowly evolved into marketing consulting. And at the time in my master's degree, which was kind of this experimental phase, I was doing something called conversion rate optimization, which was looking at websites and deciding if I turn this button blue instead of red, more people might click on it. And I was getting some success helping some people out. And I was also participating in an entrepreneurship program called The Foundry. And uh, I learned something that was really interesting at this time, which was just declaring that you're a student makes people much more willing to talk to you than normal. And so I started reaching out to entrepreneurs that I wanted to learn more from, whose blogs I was reading, podcasts I was finding. And I said, hey, I'm Kyle, and I'm with a group of 20 entrepreneurship students, and I would like to ask you some questions and interview you for our group. And it was true. I was sharing these things with our group, but it was just something that I had invented by myself and did share with the group. But it wasn't like a school project or anything, but just saying, hey, I'm a student makes people be like, wow, well, I feel good helping students, so I will talk to you. And I built relationships with a couple of key people that right when I graduated, one of them ended up hiring me to carry on. So there was about 2 years, and that's when I transitioned out of conversion rate optimization, which I had a few good case studies. I helped a few good websites boost a little bit more conversions and learned a little bit more about marketing and web design and all of these things. And then kind of accidentally got into the world of content marketing.
Hmm. So now you get into the content marketing that leads you to working for, I think, the startup or the smaller business. Go maybe walk through how that evolved or how that went for you.
Yeah, I feel like I got lucky in this, and it was maybe based on my relationships at the time. You know, graduating with a master's degree, I had done a tremendous amount of writing, but doing some writing of a paper for a professor that will maybe halfway read your paper is very, very different than writing competitive content that's graded by Twitter and Google and search engines and all of these things. So I was in the deep end, learning how to create great content. And the first few months of working for this startup were really, really difficult for me. It was like passing through a crucible. And I learned one thing that I couldn't produce all of the content that was necessary to grow. So I needed to learn how to hire other writers and manage other writers, and started working with standard operating procedures to capture and describe exactly what it was I was looking for. And so after about 3 months, I finally started hitting the ground and hitting our goals of getting out 10 2,000 plus word articles produced a month that were ranking and growing our traffic about 10% month over month. Um, and this became the foundation of a book I would write called The Story Engine, which is how to capture your story and your brand and your message in a consistent way and grow your business over time. And one of the greatest things about this was like I was learning how to do a lot of writing. I was doing great output, but just like in the Foundry, I discovered that creating great content was a great way to build relationships, which I'm sure you know all about through this podcast. And creating opportunities to reference people in different articles, ask people questions. I started building a network through my body of work, which then helped me um, grow and elevate and create new opportunities after this. I worked for the startup for a little more than a year, and by the time I had left, they went from about 400,000 to $1 million in annual recurring revenue, and about a year later, they ended up selling to GoDaddy.
Hmm. So now, so you're with them for a little over years, you'd mentioned, and now what led you to make that change? Was it outgrew the role, wanted to pursue something different, got canned, uh, parted ways, had to get a better opportunity? Kind of what led to the change?
Um, it was a mix of all of those things. I feel like it was a role that was designed as an apprenticeship, so something that I was supposed to be in and develop and add value to, but it wasn't uh, intended to be a permanent role. And I wanted to, and it was the intention to be like a springboard to building my own business and skill set. And so, at about the year in, we had both decided that it was time for me to move on and try new things. And so I entered the world as both a content marketing consultant and freelancer, as well as a copywriter. And I would work with many other businesses and help them develop similar content marketing strategies, hire content marketing managers, or writing articles for different people. And then slowly started learning or being more interested in not just writing good articles, but how to write sales pages and content that would make people want to buy things.
Hmm.
And so for a year or two, I was freelancing in this area, and slowly discovered more and more the power of storytelling in writing. And I can remember seeing one of the clients I was working with putting on a joint venture webinar with somebody who was talking about using storytelling from the stage to write great speeches and grow your business. And hearing this guy speak about speaking from the stage reminded me of what it was like to be a musician and what I wanted to do when I was younger by writing great songs. And so I became enchanted by the idea of using storytelling, using speaking as a way to grow my business and help other people grow their business. So this was probably around 2015, 2016 that I started moving in this area.
So
Um,
as you made that shift, how did that, or I'm sure it did, but how did it impact the business in the sense of that catapult it to being a multi-billion-dollar business and money raining down from the sky, or it took a while to kind of figure things out or iterate or find the clientele, or kind of, as you made that, kind of shift in trajectory and realization, kind of where did that set the path on over the last, I guess, almost 10 years now?
yeah, it was a very slow start. And it was difficult being I was a copywriter in a world of other copywriters and a world of other marketers, and I didn't quite know how I could stand out. And I was also struggling with something else at the time. Through my many adventures in South America, I had gotten sick. Um, I had some really bad gut health, which probably came from drinking bad water or eating bad food and not really knowing how to take care of myself or my body. And so after 4 or 5 years, this became an autoimmune condition. And so while my career was growing, my physical health was really poor. I had elbow pain, joint pain, jaw pain. I would wake up in the morning with this really extreme anxiety, and I wouldn't think like, "Oh, this is bad gut health that's messing with me." It was, "Oh, I'm not working hard enough, or the world's falling apart, or this and that." And I was certain that this was one of the greatest curses ever to happen to me. I remember hiring my first coach and complaining to him about the difficulty that I was facing in this time and how hard I had to work to get by. And he suggested maybe this autoimmune condition called Hashimoto's that you have, maybe this is your superpower. And I remember laughing at him, thinking that that was the dumbest thing I had ever heard. And about a year later, I was advancing in this world and helping facilitate a workshop filled with speakers who wanted to position themselves as great speakers. And I was using my copywriting to help them write emails, help them write pages that would position them as speakers. And this workshop just so happened to be filled with health and wellness experts. And I remember sitting next to one woman and she said, "Hey, my name's Dr. Grace, and I help people with chronic autoimmune conditions overcome them with better gut health." And I started to think about my own experience and said, wow, so the people you work with must have this and that happens. They want this, but they get that. And her jaw dropped. And she was like, "You need to come work with me." And something magical happened in that moment. Something shifted for me, which really opened up the doors to a lot of growth and success in my business. And it wasn't the skills that I had necessarily, it wasn't the experience professionally that I had, but it was actually my lived experience and the stories that I had and who I was, and particularly elements about me that I thought were bad or useless or, things that I wouldn't really want to boast about actually made me a perfect fit to help and serve this group of people who needed the help of somebody like me, sold high ticket products and services, and were very, very smart and had a hard time translating that into something that really landed for their audience. And this is somewhat the same transformation that I provide for a lot of the people I work with now, discovering my own story and my own experience and more of who I was rather than just what I do and what I know in order to set myself apart in the marketplace and attract more people. And so
Mm.
that's really where the springboard started. The success started to come more easily. I started speaking in many different health and wellness events and spaces. And I've worked with other experts in many different fields, from finance to technology, but health and wellness has always been very close to my heart from my own experiences.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. So now, so kind of going through that, maybe shift in the kind of the direction of the business or the focus and kind of how you convey that, kind of catch us, where things at today, kind of, and then compound question, which is always unfair, but where are things at today, but also kind of looking now out into the next 6 to 12 months, where do you see things headed?
Yeah. Um, For better and worse, I have been a very relationships oriented person, which we've talked about this. And what I like to do is work very deeply with a small group of people. I like to ask great questions and help people reveal stories and ideas and teachings and get great results for it. And I've been working really hard on creating that small array of clients that I make a huge impact with. And that's been how I've been working for the last 5 or 6 years. And now, with the onset of AI, I've been doing a lot of experimentation in how I can take my own inquisitiveness, my curiosity, my questions, and help people at a larger scale and remove myself from being always the one with my energy and my talents and my things having to drive things forward. So I've been creating different things from AI prompting that takes people through similar interview processes, which I do. I've been writing another book, which I've actually found even before publishing. Having this body of work has really helped me train other artificial intelligences to write stories, to write teaching points, and to scale up what I do. And so I want to, in the next 6 to 12 months, lean into a real abundance philosophy of being able to give my work and my brilliance away at a much more affordable rate to helping people share who they are, which I believe, particularly in the next 6 to 12 months, is going to become some of the most valuable things out there. Because in a world where there's so much AI, there's so much information being sprayed around and people posting 10,000 tweets, with a single prompt, there is going to be a bigger demand for the human element. And more people are going to want to see the real who behind things, which is something that AI isn't ever going to be able to synthesize on its own. And so I want to empower as many people as possible to be able to share who they are and share their vision with that, because I also believe it's one of the most important things that we can be doing right now is sharing our stories, inspiring others, and shaping the world in a way that is in alignment with what we see fit. I think no matter where you are on a political spectrum or any kind of philosophy, I think there's plenty of things that you can see are going wrong in the world. And I also believe that only if we are taking up the pens and writing our own stories and writing the world in the direction that we want it to be, and understanding our own power as individuals to do that, we need as many people as possible engaged in that right now.
No, I think that's you hit on. I think that everybody in a lot of different industries and across a lot of different verticals are taking on that AI question and saying, one, how's it going to impact the business? Is this something for the better, for the worse, or a little bit of mixture of both? And how do I stay relevant, utilize it, and maybe and leverage it? And so it sounds like, just as the legal industry is grappling with that and content creation, along with a whole bunch of others, it'll be an interesting journey to see how it all plays out, and hopefully for all of our benefit and for the good. And I certainly agree that that keeping the human element is gonna. I think it's not fully defined yet, but it'll certainly be impactful as to the or how we're able to process and how we're able to continue to maintain relationships and both personal and business. So I think that's a certainly an interesting trajectory that we'll all get journey we'll get to go on together.
Yeah.
But now's we've kind of reached the present day of the journey, and even look into a bit as to where things are headed. Great time to transition to the two questions I always like to ask at the end of each episode. So we'll jump to those now. So the first question I'd like to ask is, along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what'd you learn from it?
It's hard to really think of a bad business decision, because like the learning from them is always the most valuable. Um,
Well, I can imagine if you lost $1 trillion in a business, you'd probably still consider it bad, even if you learned a lot of lessons. But take a
yeah.
pick as you maybe want something that you learned or a mistake that you made that you learned from then.
Yeah. So, um, one of the more interesting ones is investing a lot of my money into a high-end coach. And I am a high-end coach, and I absolutely endorse doing this these days. But this was somebody who had gotten a lot of success and was probably a coach that was a little too advanced or a little too far along for me. And I was hoping that by putting down a bunch of my money and kind of creating that fire under my bum to get me wanting to level up to the next level, that the investment and the boldness of the investment on its own would catapult me into the next level. And it ended up leaving me just really stressed out all of the time about how I was going to make ends meet, how I was going to pay for everything. And yeah, it really sent me in the opposite direction. And so the lesson I learned is I think it's amazing and very valuable to invest in coaching. And you really want to make sure that the person that you are hiring is the right fit for where you're at and can really solve the specific problem that you're looking for, because simply being bold and going for it and taking a big leap, which is something I've done many, many times for better and worse, and it's mostly worked out for me. Um, yeah, I think you've got to really make sure that you're getting the right coach and you understand exactly what you want from them and the problem that they can help you with.
Yeah, I think that, my very limited experience have some both clients, friends, and otherwise that are in the coaching industry, and some of them are awesome and worth every penny, and both because they have experience, background, they do a good job, and they're in the right, have the right or right skill set for the various types of coaching, and also plenty of charlatans that call themselves coaches, and they're the business guru that has failed at every business they've had, drove it under, doesn't or has zero foundation for giving any sort of coaching. And sometimes the sift between one and the other isn't always as straightforward as you might presume. And sometimes you get a great coach that's worth it, and other times you learn a lesson as to what makes a good coach and what to look for next time. So definitely a good one, an easy mistake to make, but a great one to learn from.
Yeah.
Second question now that I like to ask you. So now if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what's the one rule of thumb you'd recommend?
Um, the one rule of thumb is to really be able to tune in and listen to what do you want, not what you should do. Now, there's going to be a lot of things that you should be doing in business, and you're going to have to do a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to do. But if you can wake up, especially as a founder, as a leader, and really tune into your vision and what you want and lead and make choices from that instead of a place of fear or anxiety or necessity, you're going to make better decisions. You're going to look into the future, and it is your and being uncomfortable and then making decisions from a place of should or anxiety is going to limit your growth and your ability. And it's probably going to mean you're stepping on your team's toes and doing more harm than good in your position. So really tune into your truth. And there will be many, many times where that is tested to deep limits. But if you can listen to that, you will be able to navigate and grow. And I think it's more important than ever, again, in the deep transition that we all find ourselves in right now.
Awesome. Well, great. Definitely some good mistakes to learn from, some great takeaways and rules of thumb. So now, as we do wrap towards the end of the episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be an employee, they want to be an investor, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above. What's the best way to reach out to you, contact you, find out more?
Absolutely. I would go to thestoryengine.co, and I would highly recommend checking out my podcast as well, Devin. I hope you'll be a guest on it sometime soon, where I create stories with absolutely brilliant entrepreneurs and leaders and founders. Every single week on the show, I will take you through a world-class, one-of-a-kind process where I'll ask you questions about who your ideal client is, what they're looking for, and we will co-create a story together. Every podcast ends with every one of my guests leaving with not necessarily a new story, but one of their stories told in a way that they would have usually never expected to tell before, that they can use on stages, on podcasts, on webinars to enroll and engage more of their ideal clients. So you can check that out at thestoryengine.co. And I have many of my books listed there. And you can find me on my social media links as well. So that's the best place to find me.
Awesome. We'll definitely encourage people to reach out, support or expand their network, support a great business. If nothing else, make a new best friend, and maybe I'll have to stop by sometime on the podcast and tell my story and flip the script a little bit. So definitely would be a fun opportunity. But thank you again for coming on the podcast. It's been it's been a pleasure. Now, for all of you that are listeners that are out there, if you have your own journey to share and you'd like to be a guest on the podcast, we'd love to have you. Just go to inventiveunicorn.com, apply to be on the show. Couple more things as listeners, make sure to click share, subscribe, leave us a review. Helps us to reach even more startups and small businesses to help them along their journey to success. And along that note, if along your journey you ever need help with patents or trademarks or anything else with your startup or your small business, just go to strategymeeting.com, grab some time with us to chat, and we are always here to help. Well, thank you again for coming on the podcast, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
The road ain't straight, it's got a bend. Dreams of seeds we plant, my friend. Dusty boots, but a heart of gold. Your story's waiting to be told. Inventive journey, here we go. Through highs and lows, we let it flow. Startups rising, small be shine. Your time is now, your stars align. Cowbell ring and feel the beat. Hustle hard, don't take a seat. Every step you're blazing trail. Inventive journey never fails. Inventive journey.